Welcome to episode 322 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. I'm your host, Ian Martin, and today we're going to be finding out about the Vercors area of France and why one chalet company is offering alcohol-free ski holidays. We also have ski show news, snow reports from Australia, New Zealand and Chile, your feedback, and that is today's show. So let's meet today's guest. My first guest is a regular on the podcast. I think this is her 7th appearance on the show, the last of which was in episode 308 when she was telling us about Sundance Resort in Utah. I am delighted to welcome back freelance journalist Katja Gaskell. Hi, Katja. How are you?
Hi, Ian. I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to be back.
And where are you today?
I'm back in London, just having literally arrived back a couple of hours ago from Saint-Gervais-les-Bains in France.
Yeah, well, we have especially timed this podcast to fit in around your flights. We're not actually going to talk about Saint-Gervais today, but I imagine you had a fantastic time out there. Are they having a canicule, a heat wave as well?
It is very hot. Yeah, it was, like everywhere at the moment, it was a little too hot. But fortunately, when I went up to the edge of the end of the Mont Blanc tramway, it was a little cooler, so gave it a bit of respite.
Well, I would hope so, but unfortunately that freezing point has been hitting very high levels, but that's not something we're going to tackle in this particular episode. Let me move on to my second guest. He is a first-timer on the show. He is the founder of Sober Ski, a chalet company based in Mirabel. And we're going to be finding out about later on in today's show. I'm delighted to welcome Ben Coombs. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Now, I can see we're on video as we speak, and you are sitting outside with beautiful greenery behind you. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Karlshamn in Sweden, actually. So, yeah, I've been here for about a week, here for a wedding, and, yeah, just enjoying the archipelagos, bit of sailing, bit of time out on the power boat. So, yeah, very, very lucky, and the weather's been beautiful today. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, if this is your holiday, I truly appreciate you giving up some of your time to join us on the Ski Podcast. That is fantastic. You know, a question I like to ask my guests at the top of the show is, when did you ski or snowboard last? Now, Katja, you were out in the Alps just now, but I'm pretty sure you weren't skiing while you were there. I'm not sure there is anywhere you can ski unless you're going really high mount in the Mont Blanc Massif at the moment. So when were you last on snow?
So I was in the Three Valleys on the very last week of the season in April, which was great. And it was fantastic. We had really, really good snow conditions and nobody on the piste. And yeah, it was a wonderful few days.
Cool. Cruising down the Jerusalem piste as fast as you can to the bottom then.
That's right.
Excellent. Fantastic. What about yourself, Ben? When were you last on snow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would have been there just at the end of January, just after our very first trip in Mirabel, just across from Saint Martin. So not too far away from Katja at all. But yeah, end of January.
So how was the snow then? There was a big snowfall in the middle of January. If you were quite close to that, you probably had really good conditions.
Amazing. Tons and tons of powder, more than we could have asked for. I think it ended up being probably one of the best seasons we've had in a long time for snowfall. I was sad to go so soon. I normally stay a little bit longer, but yeah, it was great to be there just at that time. I think we timed it to perfection. Our guests were over the moon. It was like we'd organised the weather as well.
Cool. Well, we've referred to the summer over here in the Northern Hemisphere, where we're having consecutive heat waves, canicule in France, and most of our listeners are in the Northern Hemisphere. But down under, the season is well underway. So let's hear from Australia and New Zealand expert Rachel Oakes-Ash and then Guy Beatson, who's based in New Zealand, on how their seasons are progressing.
Thanks, Ian. It's certainly been quite an interesting week in the Australian and New Zealand ski fields. Not because of big storms or no storms. We're just chugging along, to be honest. I've just come back from Perisher, which is the biggest resort in Australia, which is 1,245 hectares. I got to ski Mount P, which is where the $22 million chairlift was installed last year. And I was honestly and truly expecting it to be rubbish, with all the doom and gloom that everyone's posting on Instagram and social media. But I honestly and truly didn't hit ice, didn't scrape anything, and was quite surprised and impressed by how the snow groomers and snowmakers had managed to farm snow and push it around. Now, good news is, of course, a snowstorm has just come through and all the resorts have had between 10 and 25 centimetres, which has helped them extend terrain and open more runs for people in Australia to really enjoy. And it's bluebird weather, so it really is pristine and fantastic. I also got up to Charlotte Pass for the opening of their double Guthrie's chair, which has opened up their more advanced and technical terrain to snowboarders, because prior to that it was just a pommer, which is and it flung you off at the top. It was a fast pommer, and it was a bit of a trial for those on a board. Charlotte Pass is our old school resort in Australia. It's the highest resort, and it takes 40 minutes in an oversnow to get there. There's no other way to get there. You could walk, you could cross-country ski, you could skidoo, but you certainly can't drive. It is a pedestrian-only village that dates way back to 1930. It's old school. You wouldn't wear your Goldberg or your Fuse Alp, that's for sure. You would definitely be wearing jackets that you have stuck together with gaffer tape, and be staying in an ancient, fantastic hotel that's all hand-carved fretwork and burgundy carpets, and talk of a local friendly ghost. Further south in Victoria, gosh, they're all doing okay. They're chugging along as well. Most of them have all of their lifts open by now. Perisher struggles a bit more because it's so big and has so many lifts. It has over 50 lifts and T-bars and pommers and chairs. You could still ski it for days and not have got over the whole resort. So actually not having the whole lot open isn't noticeable unless it's school holidays, in which case there's really long queues for the chair. There's no doubt about that. And the car park is an issue. You may have seen the footage on social of the long snake of cars going into Perisher last weekend. That is a pretty regular occurrence, to be honest, to the ski fields in Australia. Perisher sits in the national park. It does have a plan for an 800-bed village and a car park that goes up high and then underground, I think. But national parks has various issues that are challenging that have stopped so far that all being opened up and the car park being built. There are buses that you can catch. There's a ski tube, and they can go when the road is already closed to traffic. So you can still get up there, which is fantastic. Over in New Zealand, well, they're in a bit of better position than we are. Definitely up in Canterbury and Mackenzie that have been getting the most snow from all of the storms that they have had. The Otago resorts of Queenstown and Wanaka and Cardrona, Coronet, Remarks, etc., they're doing well. They've had more storms than we have, or they've had more snow in each storm. In Australia, we are expecting to have another storm, we hope, in August. Let's have our fingers crossed. The issue this season, of course, has been this super El Nino, which has benefited Chile, which have over 6 metres in less than 12 days, and unfortunately have the opposite issue, which is they can't open until August, and has meant that we've had the warmer conditions over our side of the South Pole Cap. So we're hoping that flips at some stage in August, and that we get what Utah and Colorado got last season, of course, which is big snow in spring. Bring it on, we say. I'm right into the spring skiing, and particularly over in Cardrona, because they're going to have the Snow League, Shaun White Snow League on September 19, which is a pretty big coup for them, that's for sure. We'll definitely have Scotty James back in Thredbo, I have no doubt, with his Mookie mini halfpipe as well. So bit of a battle across the ditch between Australia and New Zealand. Let's hope that Thredbo ends up getting those X Games we all made a fuss of over the press conference in Livigno at the Winter Olympics. Anyway, enough of me. I could talk about skiing in snow forever, particularly down under. I'll leave it up till next week, and I'll throw it back to you.
Kia ora from New Zealand, Ian. Picking up from last time, winter slept in a bit this year. Mild May, one of the driest on record for some, and the big fields down south had to push their openings back a week or two while they waited for the cold to turn up. But it's coming right. All 4 Queenstown and Wanaka mountains are open now, near enough every lift spinning. Treble Cone's got a good 64 centimetres underfoot. Whakapapa ski area is at 84 centimetres, and Porters near Christchurch is sitting deepest of the lot at around 170. Closer to home, up on our manga, that's Mount Ruapehu, we've seen some proper bluebird mornings. Clear, cold and still. And the Delta Quad at Whakapapa ski area fired up for the first time this season in the last few days. There's something about carving turns on a live volcano that never gets old. It's where a lot of us first learned to ski, and it keeps drawing many of us back when there is great snow like there is now. And spare a thought, too, for the wee club fields such as Craigieburn, Broken River and Fox Peak that are trundling away quietly, rope toes and all. Now, we also shouldn't get too comfortable. A front's barrelling in on Friday with gale nor'westers, snow down to low levels, most fields banking on a solid 10 to 15 centimetres to see July out, and for Mount Ruapehu possibly more. And it looks like there is more snow to come in the first part of August too. And the season ahead, a strong El Niño's all but locked in, which for us should mean more southerlies and a decent back half of the winter. Now's the time to keep the skis waxed and the thermals nearby. So chur, as we say down here, and ka kite anō.
Thanks to Rachel and Guy for those reports. If you'd like to know more about Rachel, aka Miss Know It All, then I highly recommend you listen to my in-depth interview with her in episode 312. It is a great story. Now, I should add that over in South America, Chile has just had an epic snowstorm. I think they had 5 meters in a single week, which is just ridiculous. Now, early this week, Portillo was still closed. However, we have just had a snow report in, so let's have a listen to that.
Hello, Ski Podcast listeners. Bartek Tyrpa here, Carve Pro team member. I'm speaking to you from Valle Nevado, Chile, where I've been skiing for the past few days, and I can honestly say the conditions are absolutely fantastic. We've had a huge amount of snowfall recently, so there's snow everywhere. The slopes are in great shape, the snow is light and dry, and skiing here right now is simply incredible. One of the best things is that the slopes are far from crowded. You have plenty of space to enjoy every turn, whether you're carving on the groomers or exploring the mountain. It's the kind of skiing we all dream about. But Valle Nevado is about much more than just the great snow. The atmosphere is something really special. This is South America, so there's music playing, people are smiling everywhere, and the whole resort has a relaxed, positive vibe. Chileans are some of the friendliest people I've ever met, and they make you feel welcome from the moment you arrive. This is my 3rd year in a row skiing here, and every single year I've been lucky enough to enjoy amazing snow and beautiful weather. If you're looking for the best place in the world to ski during the Northern Hemisphere summer, Valle Nevado should definitely be at the top of your list. I hope to see you on the slope someday. Thanks for listening and enjoy your next ski day.
I'll put some links to that in the show notes, but that is one of those situations where people are genuinely getting snowed in and there's a lot of digging that has to go on. Now, it may not be August until tomorrow, but it's only a couple of months until UK listeners can start to get in the spirit of winter, thanks to 2 snow shows here in Britain. Later in October is a London snow show, but before that, Manchester takes centre stage when the Northern Snow Show takes place on the 3rd and 4th of October at the Snow Centre, formerly known as Chill Factory. I'm going to cover that show in more detail in episode 324, but I can reveal some exciting news. GB Snow Sports freestyle skier Kirsty Muir, who took 2 4th places at the Winter Olympics, so gutted for her, but that's another story, will be there on the Saturday with the chance for young skiers to get a training session from her on the snow slope. I will also be there, hopefully interviewing Kirsty and doing a presentation about how to drive the Alps in an electric car. So listener, if you're in the area, it's free to attend. So please do drop in and say hi. I'll put links to all of that in the show notes. Right, we're going to turn to you, Katja, if that's okay. I am willing to bet that most listeners have no idea where the Vercors area is, and to be honest with you, I had to turn to Google myself to look it up. So I wondered if perhaps you could start by explaining where Vercors is in France.
Yeah, so it's in southeastern France. It's, if you look at Grenoble, it's really not far from Grenoble. It actually straddles the Isère and Dôme departments of France. But the area that we're going to be talking about today is the sort of Isère region. That's where they have most of their ski areas. And it's really easy to get to from Grenoble and is a popular kind of destination for locals from there.
Cool. So you'd maybe fly to Grenoble, or very easy to get to by train, as I like to promote. Short train journey. Well, I say short. I think is it only 3 hours, 3.5 hours from Paris to Grenoble?
Yeah, it's really easy from Paris. I think it's about 3 hours. And then you can either get a bus or hire a car. And really, you'd want to have transportation to get around, because while you can get to Villards by bus, you'd want a car to explore more of the area.
Okay, well, according to my research, there are 12 ski areas there. The biggest is the one that you just mentioned there, Villards, which seems to be always termed as Villards, Corressons en Vercors, if I've pronounced all of that correctly. So let's focus on there. It's a long name. Is that 2 ski areas combined?
Yeah, you have Villards, which is one village, and you have Corressons en Vercors, which is the neighboring village. And together they're known as Villards-Corressons. So altogether, they offer 125 kilometers of piste.
So what are they each like? What are the differences?
Okay, so yeah, Villards is the bigger village, and that was the one that was established first. It's actually one of the oldest ski resorts in France, despite not many people knowing about it. It's skiing started there about 1905, 1906. And then Corençon and Vercors was about 45 years later that they started developing their sort of ski area. And it wasn't until the early 80s that actually the two linked up. So Villards is a nice sort of town of about 4,500, 5,000 people. Corençon and Vercors, tiny village, one of those picturesque, perfect French alpine villages with only about, 300, 400 people. So,
and I think you mentioned it's one of the oldest ski resorts in France. Am I right in saying that Chamonix and Briançon were numbers 1 and 2, with Villards coming in after that?
That's my understanding, yes. And so I'm hoping that's right, but that is my understanding. And it was a local family, the Villards family, I think I'm pronouncing that right. They were sort of a local family that kind of started making inroads in the ski industry, I suppose. And they were, until 2019, really part of this whole ski development. And there was 2 brothers in particular who were Daniel and Victor, who were apparently quite the characters, quite the ladies' men, who were very instrumental in kind of developing the ski area. And, interestingly, again, given that not many people have heard of the ski resort, especially outside of France, they were the first in Europe to have a 2-seater detachable chairlift and the first to have a 6-seater gondola. And you kind of go there now and they have one fairly modern gondola, which we didn't actually get to ride, the Côte 2000, because it was really high winds. But their other one is this really retro kind of forest green, charming bubble cars. So it slightly hasn't kind of advanced quite as much as perhaps some others have.
Okay, you can tell that evidently there's a lot of history to the resort. If you're saying it was one of the first to have a 2-person chair, you mentioned more recently ownership has changed.
Yeah, that's right. So in 2019, it was sold to Tony Parker. So he has got, I think, 76% stakeholders in it now. So he's a French-American basketball player, massive in France, played for the San Antonio Spurs, in the NBA. So he massive. Very controversial, apparently, him sort of taking this huge majority stake, not least because he had big plans there was going to be a big sort of 4-star tourist complex, up to 900 beds, a swimming pool, car park improvements. And that all has stalled, basically. The plans have been rejected for sort of environmental footprint and saying the bed capacity is too big. And so nothing's really happened, and it's sort of unknown whether or not anything will really.
Right. Okay. I find that really interesting about Tony Parker, because I'm pretty sure that when I was doing my ski seasons in the 90s, when I used to buy L'Equipe to find out what Man United scores were from the weekend, 2 days after they'd happened on the Monday morning, Tony Parker was across that the whole time. I mean, he was absolutely massive in France. British people might not have heard of him, but is he from that area then? Is that why he's got an interest in Villards?
I don't believe so, no. It's a slightly random link. I could be wrong, but from what I understand, no, there was no childhood growing up skiing in Villards, just an interest in having a ski resort.
Okay. And you mentioned the ski area itself, the connecting area between the 2 towns was 125 kilometers, which is a pretty decent size. What kind of altitudes are we looking at, and, who would it be suitable for?
So base area is about 1,100, goes up to just over 2,000 meters. Look, when we went, we just had a day there, and unfortunately there were really high winds and it's quite exposed at the top, so we didn't actually get to ski as much as we would have liked and had sort of stayed lower in the sort of tree area. It's largely, I would say, for, it's quite long, cruisy greens, quite fun blues. It's good for families, intermediates, beginners. Apparently there is a really fun kind of more expert area off the top of that Côte 2000 lift, but we didn't get to try any of that. But it's really family friendly. It's got the Famille Plus label, and it's really popular with locals. Okay, we were there midweek, but not busy, no crowds, no queues for lifts. So quite a laid back local favorite.
Yeah, nice. I like the sound of that. And I was looking around for a little bit of information about it. I think it's pretty good for cross-country skiing as well. Like, it's got a huge amount of cross-country skiing.
Yeah, huge amount of cross-country skiing, sort of varying reports of quite how many hundreds of kilometers of cross-country skiing it's got as a whole, the Vercors. But the popular area is in this area called Haute-Maude, and they have this wonderful cross-country section, which is about 120 kilometers of trails, but all through the trees. Sorry, it's 180 kilometers of kind of trails, all through the trees. It's called Little Sweden. Often when you go to cross-country places, it's a bit of a circular loop. That's what I found in my experience anyway. And this one, you really feel that you're going off into the trees, and you could kind of spend quite a few hours getting lost there, which was, it was really lovely. And they do biathlon, so you could try that out. And it's also really affordable. You can spend 14 euros and basically just spend the day there.
I was guessing earlier when you're saying, good for families, and really it is off the beaten track. I mean, we often cover destinations that are not so well known on the podcast, but I'm pretty sure very few Brits go there, but maybe they do. Maybe they've discovered it and found out it's a great place to take their family where they can have a really good value holiday and ski a decent ski area.
Well, I mean, we didn't hear any other English voices, which was, I have to say, quite refreshing because, some places can be maybe a bit, maybe too many. Is that fair to say? Too many British voices sometimes. But, look, it's a really cheaper option. An adult ski pass, definitely for last season, started from £32 for the day, which is really affordable compared to some of the bigger resorts.
Well, that definitely is a good value. You mentioned to me before the podcast, you went to visit a restaurant that sounded really interesting while you were there, a place called Le Clarion.
Yeah, that's right, Le Clarion. So it's it's basically a sustainable restaurant in the middle of the forest, and the only way you can get there is by walking. So even the staff have to walk half an hour to get there and half an hour to come back. And you sort of park up in the car park, sort of near the golf course parking lot in Corançon-Vercors, and then you walk through the woods, and there's these sort of kind of fairy lights kind of guiding your way. And you eventually end up at this, it's like a fairy tale, this sort of log cabin in the middle of the woods with fairy lights and candles and a roaring fire. And I mean, it's really quite beautiful. And then you tuck into, we had raclette, of course, on little individual pans heated by candles, and they make their own sort of walnut wine and local liqueurs. And I mean, it was a really, really fantastic evening. Roast marshmallows on the fire, and it's a very special place.
So everything is locally sourced, and I think as well everything is powered by renewables as well.
That's right, yeah. So it's a very sort of green experience.
Yeah, perfect. Well, when I go to Vercors, which I'm sure will happen because I'm busy ticking off resorts from my list, I think I will definitely check out Le Clarion. And in the meantime, Katia, thank you very much for that. Very interesting to hear about a completely different destination. If it's okay with you, I'm going to turn to Ben now. So, Ben, thank you for joining us from Sweden. Now, the name of your company is Sober Ski, so I think it's probably evident that you're offering alcohol-free ski holidays. And while I was doing my research, it was clear that this is about more than just alcohol. We'll come on to that. But I wondered if we could start by finding out a little bit more about you. When did you start skiing yourself?
It's funny, I kind of started skiing probably quite late, really, in general terms. I probably didn't go skiing, I think, until I was 20 or 21. So it wasn't something I'd ever done as a young kid. I ended up on a bit of a random work trip, kind of out of the blue, really, and then just fell in love with it from there. So it was as soon as I'd been there, it was like the first holiday I'd ever been on where I knew that I could spend more time out there. Normally, I'm ready to come home by the end, and I just fell in love with it. So it all started from there, really.
Cool. Now, you look very young to me, but have you done many holidays before you set up Sober Ski?
So I ended up kind of, so I'm 28 now, but I ended up doing a season very shortly after that. So I kind of quit my job, went straight onto a season in Maribel, and just fell in love with it. Maribel kind of then became a partial home, really, for sort of at least 2 to 3 months a year. And then I went every single year after that back to that same place.
Where were you working in Maribel?
So I was working at the time, it was Merry Ski. So it's a kind of a luxury chalet company. So yeah, working there as one of the drivers, looking after people around the resort, taking people to and from the slopes. So I kind of come from that sort of automotive background anyway. So it's quite a nice change of environment, but something similar that I kind of already knew.
Nice. Well, regular listeners will know that my son worked out in Mirabel last winter, and I can assure you that it certainly wasn't alcohol free. Now, if you were driving, that would have been, essential part of it. But can I ask, I don't know if you were drinking during those seasons, and I'm assuming that you don't drink now. So what led you to stopping drinking yourself, if I can ask that?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely as part of the season for sure. It was quite lucky the shift pattern that we had, where you had almost 3 or 4 consecutive days off, which was quite unusual for the normal season setup. Normally you're doing shift work and split shifts, so of course it would be impossible. But no, absolutely on the days off and in between, it was, the culture is very much centered around après, heavy drinking, lots of late nights out, which then means you then end up wasting ski time the next day. And I kind of did this on and off really for the next few years afterwards. I would come back for sort of 2-3 months at a time, more on kind of longer extended holidays really. But I just found that eventually it was just becoming too much. And I just felt like I was leaving so much on the table personally, professionally. I thought it was the one thing that I kind of never had tried to change. Stopping drinking is something I'd never even considered before. And I didn't realize until afterwards actually how much I was kind of, like I say, leaving, not necessarily fulfilling my full potential really. And I recognized that and thought something has to change, and why not try changing the thing you've never tried before?
Oh, well, I think that is really interesting. And it's certainly true that I know many people who've missed the early lift on a powder day because maybe they've had too much the night before. I've did seasons as well, and I will readily admit that there were times during those when I was drinking far too much. But these days, I hardly drink at all. Now, that's partly because I'm older, and it's partly because I'm training for different events and things like this, and it doesn't really work when you get to my age. But it's a bit like my work that I do on Ski Flight Free. I choose not to fly, but I don't tell other people that they don't have to. And I don't drink, but I don't tell other people not to drink. If you're on a ski holiday, you can certainly do what you want to have a good time. So I guess my question to you is, why do you think skiing and drinking are so closely related? Is it just because people are out on holiday?
I think it's a mixture. I think it's the escapism of it. I think it's the scenery that you find yourself in. It's the way that skiing is set up is that there's a natural quite early finish, right? You're normally done by 4, maybe 5 o'clock, depending on the time of year. And then there's quite a long gap there before the evening, before you then go and have your nice dinner out or your evening kind of cocktails. I think it's more filling time. But it kind of blends itself into that natural sort of sporting environment where, you go to the football and you have a drink or whatever. It seems to go hand in hand. I think it definitely varies by resort, but for sure in Mirabel, funnily enough, quite a British resort, obviously, as I'm sure you'll know. Maybe it's that density of the Brits that go there that maybe enhances that even more. But I think certainly it just seems like it's drinking is so synonymous with skiing. And I think that's where I kind of really found this natural gap. It was where I felt I couldn't keep going back to that same resort in the same way and enjoying it anymore. I'd kind of fallen out of love with the party side of it and the lifestyle side of it. And I thought, actually, that was enough to almost put me off going back there at all. And then I realized, actually, there's another way I can do this. I don't have to necessarily go into a 3-month binge every time I'm going to go back to the resort and try and enjoy the skiing. I can actually enjoy it another way. And it was almost my own problem that brought us there, really. So
that is really interesting. I think evidently everybody is aware of the increase, let's say, in the availability of alcohol-free beer, wine, gin, all sorts of products now. But people don't necessarily choose to have those the whole time. So there's a big difference between doing something as a personal choice. But at what point did you think there should be a sober ski holiday?
Well, I think, as I said, it started off really as a bit of a personal journey for me. It was more of a journey of sort of self-discovery. I'd kind of set myself this challenge of going, right, I want to come back to the mountains again, but I don't want to do it in the same way that I've always done it. So I'm going to try and do a full season without drinking and just see what happens. I wanted to go in there and go completely against the grain, knowing it's completely unheard of to go to particularly that resort and not drink. So I thought, I'm going to stare it in the face. I'm going to go back there and prove to myself, firstly, that I can do that as a bit of a personal challenge. But the more I then started telling people about that while I was out in the bars, I was then documenting this on my Instagram. There's a bit of kind of accountability. I then started to think, actually, this is bigger than just me. I was having these really natural conversations with people in the bar who are coming up to me. I'm wearing my sober ski hat on, and they're saying, wow, like, I really respect what you're doing. I wish I could do that secretly, but all my friends are over there completely hammered. Or, oh, actually, I don't really drink that much anyway. And it's so funny. I started having all of these really, really natural, amazing conversations where I suddenly thought, actually, this isn't as niche as maybe I think it is. I think actually this goes far beyond just my own experience. There's clearly loads of other people around just in this place alone that are going maybe through that, or maybe questioning their relationship with alcohol and thinking, actually, I might want to do this in a bit of a different way, but I just don't really know how to do that. And for me, then the penny dropped, and I thought, hold on, this is exactly what's missing here. There are other people like me who want maybe more from their trip. They want a trip with a bit more purpose. They've been doing it the same way their whole lives. Maybe every other holiday they do in the exact same way as well. But maybe it's time for a change, and there needs to be something there for those people.
You did your first sober ski trip last winter. I think it was in January of this year. How did that trip go?
I mean, it was pretty surreal, really. I mean, we obviously, being a brand new company, obviously something that's completely unheard of. As I said, a very alien concept to most people, to go on a ski holiday and not drink, right? But yeah, we had 9 strangers who came, barely knew each other. Some of them maybe knew of each other. We had a father and son there. We had a fair few solo travelers, a few for people who were kind of mutually acquainted but hadn't actually quite met in real life. So we had kind of people from all walks of life and all completely different backgrounds come and join us. We had a guy fly all the way from New York, from America, who was actually our first customer and took a chance on us. And I think to be finally sat there in January around a table with a group of complete strangers who at the beginning of the week didn't really know a thing about each other, all kind of came for their own reasons. By the end, they were the best of friends, and they still talk now in the group chat. And I think to have seen those connections be made, to actually prove that this can work, this is something that people really can enjoy, because we were going in completely blind. We didn't know. I essentially put my dream ski day together and said, right, here's the itinerary, here's what I'd do. If I could do anything I wanted, here's what I'd fill the hours of the day with. And I almost just crafted this kind of blueprint. I'd got really into cold plunging. I'd got really into saunas. I got really into kind of skiing. I ski hard. I don't really like to stop too often. And I mixed all that together and said, right, here's what we're going to do. And they took to it incredibly. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, it's interesting what you're saying there about the schedule and how you pieced it together, because having looked at the website, it seems to be that you've included a lot of time in there for reflection, connecting. You've got yoga sessions and breath work in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of, I suppose, where sort of wellness meets skiing. And I think that encompasses all kinds of things, whether it's, better food from the chef in the chalet, like you mentioned there, yoga as well. My sister actually is a yoga instructor. So she comes in and was running regular pre and post ski stretching sessions. So mobility, maybe just 20 minutes, but offering them regularly before breakfast and then when they come back. And that was really helping some of the people that had come back and hadn't been skiing for years, maybe were finding it very physically demanding. Having that option there was helping them feel way fresher than they would have done otherwise. And so that was a big key part of the recovery. I was also guiding them through a lot of their first cold plunges. So we were kind of doing icy cold submersions on the balcony right next to the hot tub in water that was maybe 2.5, 1.9 degrees. And so kind of coaching people that for the first time was another challenge. So it's just beyond the skiing itself, either side of that ski time, which is totally protected, we just made sure that there was always enough for them to do. And then I think that then led really nicely into the evenings where we did more mindset sessions, kind of informal conversations just to spur a bit more of the conversation in a more meaningful sort of direction, really.
Cool. I mean, I get into the sea here in Brighton through the winter, but the coldest it ever gets here is about 8 or 9 degrees. Katya, I happen to know, has done her own ice swimming as well. Do you want to remind us where that was and what temperature the water was then?
Yeah, so I love cold water swimming. So I swim at Hampstead Ponds year round here in North London. So that often gets down to definitely below 5, but the one where I came on and talked on the podcast was in Samoa, and they had the World Ice Swimming Championships, where the competition has to take place in waters that are below 5 degrees. And while I didn't take part in the races, I did get to go in the water. I think it was about 3 or 4, so it was definitely fresh, but I'm a big fan of getting into the cold water.
And apart from the physiological advantages, of which there are many, I think for me, it is, let's say, the psychological benefit, which is what you're referring to, Ben. It's an opportunity to, cleanse yourself kind of literally and metaphorically at the same time.
I mean, for me, that's really started when I stopped drinking. I couldn't just stop drinking and not replace it with something. I really wanted to challenge myself at the same time. And I just had this crazy idea. I was like, I'm just going to pack an inflatable ice bath in my suitcase. And I stuck it on my balcony. And I was like, as part of me quitting drinking and doing it very publicly in this resort, I'm also going to try and do an ice bath every single day for the month of January. So like my version of dry January included doing a really, really freezing cold ice bath. And I think once I then discovered how still that makes you and how much discipline you can build, and of course then just like you say, the recovery side of it as well, from heavy legs after a long day skiing and skiing hard, all of these things started to add up. And I thought, actually, this is the perfect combination to what we're doing here, physically, mentally. You feel bulletproof once you've done that for 31 days.
It's definitely very interesting to me. You mentioned when people found out you were doing a season without drinking, that lots of people came up to you and said, oh, I wish I could do that, or, that's fantastic that you're doing it. I do sometimes find that some people are less positive about other people who are not drinking because it makes them more conscious about their own alcohol consumption. Did you come across that at all?
You know what? Much to my surprise, very, very little compared to what I was expecting. I thought I was going to walk into there. Bearing in mind, I know a lot of people around the resort. It's, there's a lot of familiar faces around. You're very much known as somebody who does drink a lot. And then all of a sudden to not do that, I was, definitely quite apprehensive about what I thought. But honestly, I think with the group of friends that I had and just generally, most people couldn't be more supportive, which I know isn't always the case. But I think when you're really confident in what you're doing and also attaching it to that purpose, which for me was building Sober Ski and then trying to actually build it into more than just the decision to give it up. It was actually for a bigger purpose. It was only really met for me with positivity, and I got very good very quickly at saying, actually, I'm okay to not drink and not have to worry too much about it. When you're out, I was still going to après, pretty much every day. I was still putting myself in those situations, but I wasn't, you got very good at saying no very quickly. And so, I built up a lot of confidence that way.
Well, it seems to me that Sober Ski is a very supportive environment for whatever reason that you might be getting involved. Katja?
Yeah. Have you found that the resorts, well, Maribel anyway, are responding to people not drinking, so that bars have, alcohol-free beer or the spirits? Because definitely that's something that you find more, certainly here in London anyway.
Absolutely. I think certainly last year, I think it got better. I think for a few years, it would have been unheard of even say nearly 5 years ago when I was on season. I can't even recall what options there were. Not that I would have been looking for them back then, but now I think there's certainly a better selection than there has been before. Maybe at least 1 or 2 options. It's not just the Kronenberg Zero and that's it. They seem to be pulling in better options, better quality options. I think there's still a way to go, definitely. But certainly it's better catered for than it has been in the past, I think, now. And I've actually found that even skiing around the resorts, of course, to Latania and to Saint Martin, there are definitely options over there too. So it's getting better.
Cool. I can say from my personal experience, because I'm typically asking if people have got a zero beer rather than not, that they are in most places, although it depends exactly what you're looking for. A lot of the time you get offered something which is 0.5% alcohol, which, is not going to get most people drunk, but it is not alcohol free. So you just need to bear that in mind sometimes, right?
Well, I think that in particular, that your body processes that so quickly that you would never even get the effects of that in any way. So I think it's more of a legal thing. If there's any kind of slight trace of it, then they have to put that on the bottle. I think the rules are different in Europe than they are to in the UK, but essentially anything under 1% is essentially 0%.
I guess I was just thinking about someone who might not want to drink alcohol, perhaps for religious reasons or something like that. Mm-hmm. But let's focus on next year then. So what are you offering for 2027?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our repeat week again. So a very similar week to what we did this year already. So 22nd to the 29th of January, 2027, we're back in Maribel, back in the same chalet, very near Maribel Centre. Yeah, we're really lucky. We're already sort of 50% booked for that, which is great. So again, another exact same week. So including all of the breath work, the yoga, our own private chef in there who's looking after everybody on the cuisine. And as we're talking about it, a lot of alcohol-free alternatives as well. So that's kind of one of the big draws of what we do, is we actually make sure that we do stock good quality premium alcohol-free alternatives, whether that's beers, whether that's clean spirits, even alcohol-free wines now, which are getting better and better every day. So yeah, includes all of that stuff, private and single rooms available for people to enjoy too.
Cool. Well, that is brilliant, Ben. Thank you so much for that. I will put a bunch of links in the show notes so listeners can find out more if they're interested. We're just going to move towards the end of the show now. I love getting feedback from our listeners. Let me know what you've enjoyed so far, if you have ideas for future features. If you enjoyed this episode, you can leave a comment on Spotify, Instagram or Facebook, or you can drop me an email to theskipodcast@gmail.com. We're also on WhatsApp. I release exclusive material ahead of each episode there. So look in the show notes for all of those links. Louise Cotter said, the night train ride, that was episode 320, sounds a lot of fun. My travel wish list is getting out of control thanks to the Ski Podcast. She also says that she's excited to hear the alcohol-free skiing episode. So hopefully, Louise, you have. Fiona Harvey-Jordan enjoyed episode 318 with Shemi Alcott. Fantastic episode as always. And Colin Tierney referred to Sam Haddad's amazing story in episode 321, how she had to get back on her snowboard after being pulled out of a crevasse. You have to do it and keep going, he says. And he mentioned his first ski lesson when he fell off a lift, broke his glasses, but was determined to keep going. Now, there are now 322 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up with. 124 of those were listened to in the last week alone. So if you would like to keep your snow fix going as you wait for winter to come round again, then just go to theskipodcast.com, have a search around the tags and categories, and you are bound to find something of interest. I can also tell you that most of our listeners in the last week were in the UK, just over 20% in North America, 10% in Australia and New Zealand, and everyone else spread as far and wide as Azerbaijan, Malaysia, and South America. Right, that is it for this week. I am taking a summer break next week. So the Ski Podcast will be back in 2 weeks' time when we will be discussing how skiers are using AI and looking at new options for disabled skiers in the UK. If you do enjoy the podcast and you want to help out, you're very welcome to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the Ski Podcast. But for now, I would like to thank my guest today, Katja. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on again. Always nice to be on the podcast.
And
Ben,
thanks
a lot.
Thank you. And finally, listener, thank you for joining us wherever in the world you're listening right now. And until next time, goodbye.